Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for inviting somebody from outside to intellectual, understand also political, the reality, all the issues, actualities that are, but it's very encouraging that we can sit and talk about it as Christians, as people that are involved one or another way into representing states and knowing Holy See one way or another. Also, like myself, coming from a nation that is very much in solidarity with Ukraine. But at the same time, it's very, of course, it is very emotional. And it's very emotional. So talking about it and thinking, I was thinking that I will make my presentation in two pieces. One little, and it's talking about Lithuanians and situation. And then another one, maybe more theoretical and commentatory. But I would like to start saying, that Ostpolitik is a term that is very misleading and misinterpreting if we talk about Ostpolitik from the side of Holy See. There was never Ostpolitik. Because Ostpolitik, it's political term coined also by journalists, but also by politicians, when we talk about relationship of mostly Germany, but also Western Europe towards Soviet Union. It was also called Realpolitik. And of course, Ostpolitik sometimes is also named as Realpolitik of the Holy See. I think it's neither, but that we'll leave for later. But talking about, what Vladika Boris was saying, that everybody asking, what is Holy See position? People want to know. They follow it on social media. It's always now the actually topic. If you look at the topic, Pope and war in Ukraine or Pope in Moscow, it goes immediately clicks. It's hot topic. It sells very well. And I think it was discovered by some media very early in and then worked on it. So I'm talking about 1946. Lithuania is reoccupied by Red Army. There were already repressions, when we were occupied in 1940. The Nazis came. War is over in kind of, in various places, but not in Lithuania because there's armed resistance. So freedom fighters get one man to cross borders, to go to Rome and to bring letter to Pope. Hoping that Pope will be voice, because there's no information, nobody talks in no press about what's going on in Lithuania. Armed resistance, people killed, deported, everything that goes on, it does not exist. And so that's, so this Luksha, his name, he goes. He brings the letter, he comes back and dies. He was killed. Still now, the archives of Pius XII period of ruling is open, and we don't know yet if that letter is in those archives, even people are looking. Of course, there was nothing said by Pope ever about what was going, what was asked for. And I remember talking to then ambassador to the Holy See, Lithuanian Kazys Lozoraitis, who was saying that there was like after Pius XII passed away, somebody wanted to make a resume of what Pope said about Lithuania. But we know that when he was elected, our state virtually already did not exist. It existed yet, but the Second World War, there was no one word through all his period. At the same time, Holy See kept Lithuanian embassy to the Holy See through all time of Pius, then of John, and of course, John Paul II. So were one of the, maybe only one state that had continuity of diplomatic representation of not existing state from its since it was destroyed and since it was. So, but we're here just talking about Pius XII. the term of Ostpolitik came later. But if you're looking into what the Holy See was doing for churches under anti-Christian, for churches under oppression, but I'm talking about churches. It was since Bolshevik Revolution. Pius XI knew very well what the Bolshevism was. So did Pius XII. But they were trying also, to have some movements towards Bolshevik Russia, and also there were lots of thoughts, and also some actions I think were mistaken about Christianity in those lands where Christianity was envisioned as disappearing, being forced to disappear. First of all, Russian Orthodoxy. There were lots of people who believed that Russian Orthodox Church will be annihilated. But before it was also already, before First World War, it was under a very strong crisis. And with Pius XI, we have that movement of Eastern Rite, of Catholic priests and religious prepared in Eastern Rite liturgy to work with Orthodox, first of all, Russians. And here, not so much maybe thinking about union or something, but just giving service to. So you mentioned Rotov, very complex figure, extremely. I worked with his archive at Marion General House. So, but that's also later. So what we look, like if their Vatican had policy or politics. So first half of the 20th century, after Bolshevik Revolution, I would call it Rusicum policy. To keep faith, to help, to send priests. Zizek, for example, one of the missionaries who then went through Gulag and everything. And then with expansion of the communism into Central Europe, the question was, but again, with almost the same that was happening in Soviet Union then, but in enlarged Soviet Union that engulfed much more of Catholic population, including Lithuania, Latvia, Western Ukraine. And what was going in Poland at the beginning, but then, other countries. What we look in, especially what Vatican II, preparation of Vatican II triggered. If you want to have all church represented, there are bishops that were arrested, not allowed to fulfill their duties and everything, to get bishops. And then it starts, contacts with regimes that never was, where those contacts, there were some, but it's a different story. And so that's what, and it was, taken like Ostpolitik, but where politics enter in. John 23rd did some the things that broke very much line of then politics, secular politics of states. He looked like he endorsed movement for peace. And the movement for peace was mostly coming from the red side. And so that movement gave possibility for, or was actually, it was response from Soviet Union. But that exactly, and then it started, different kind of also imitation or whatever contacts. So Moscow was thinking, that they have probably Pope's side, but at the same time, it worked very hard with security forces, its own true, to get closer to Pope possibly, to get into Vatican, they were very much worrying about Vatican II. And it just recently, but when different countries started going into archives, we see that there was coordinated action of all Warsaw Bloc security services regarding Vatican II. We couldn't visit, couldn't see it before. So those things, and Vatican was not aware of it. Still not war, because we talk about Casaroli, you know, as architect of this politics, but we know now that Casaroli, being, you know, not as he's depicted, you know, smooth, sneaky or something of that, but really believing person, very spiritual as well. He was negotiating with Czechoslovakia government representatives, and he didn't know that they had instruction to negotiate, but never to come to agreement. And that people to whom he was talking, they were under false names. They were officers of security services and not the state, you know, or something of that. And actually, Casaroli passed away without knowing this. It came out after his death already. But at the same time, if looking about something like Ostpolitik, talking about Casaroli, what Casaroli was very much concerned looking into Helsinki agreements. He was concerned, and here we come to now, that Soviet Union goes into Helsinki agreements having intention to entrench Cold War lines and just to keep things bipolar as it was, when Europe was understanding it totally mistakenly as opening and as end of Cold War era. So church actually, at least in person of Casaroli, saw the truth, certain projects that they had inside. And Ostpolitik came from not understanding that. So Casaroli was not Ostpolitik guy. He was, another thing, you know, the talking, you have to talk, that's it. So what I want to say, you know, from historical point of view, that I know only one case when Vatican got directly involved in interstate politics. And that exactly was the beginning of Balkan Wars, when Cardinal Sodano, in agreement with John Paul II, called representatives of European countries to the Vatican and encouraged them, but in very frank way, to recognize Croatia and Slovenia. What Croatia and Slovenia is still commemorating, you know, constantly, as we know. But the rest was, you know, about silent churches. And here I would, of course, I could talk very long about Eastern churches. First of all, about Greek Catholic Church of Ruthenians and then Ukrainians. And the problem is maybe that they got under congregation of Eastern churches of that Pius XI movement. So I mean, it never been object of international politics. It's just ecclesial. And as ecclesial, it's again, you know, like that union movement that was important in Rusicum period and then then become much less important for general politics and views of the Vatican. And then, you know, that's the Paul VI, we think about Ostpolitik, yes, or something, but he spoke about silent church. And only one shift that was there, you know, silent church, that. And John Paul II, of course, he came out to say, will be the voice of that church, meaning churches, different ones. Why John Paul II for our part of the world is so important? He knew us, and another thing, you know, I think, again, we finish as Lithuanian, 1991. Soviet Union stepped into crashing our independence movement. Night into Sunday, 13 January, army moved against peaceful defenders of the parliament and television tower. They break in, they're shooting, people die, 13 together, but it's shock of that. And Sunday Angelus, I was then in Rome already, about 20 Lithuanians that were in Rome at that time, that's all that were there, gather in the square of St. Peter's. John Paul II comes out from the window, prays Angelus, and then he says, I see Lithuanians, because there was people with flags here, and I have to say that I pray for you. That was all that Pope said. And it meant everything. So if we compare now what we expect from Pope, and you know how it goes in interviews and everything. So also, I don't know, is there Ostpolitik or not Ostpolitik, but also you have to think about communication, about how Vatican has to deal with huge changes and everything. So I will stop here, but I will be very happy to participate in further discussion. Thank you. Your first question was the poked bear. Instead of that, I would like to briefly share what I came into knowledge, because I never really looked into it very deeply, when I was trying to counter also in Secretary of State that influence of Russia that was present there in two ways. One is through Russian state representatives in constant flow through the Vatican. Every week there was somebody visiting. Every week there were some levels, you know, of different ministries. And second thing, through ecclesial presence, because Ilarion, yes, he would be, you know, give concerts, speeches and something every week, lectures, and very much also would engage with cardinals present in Italy, cardinals in Vatican. Then Russian ambassador Avdeyev visited every cardinal that was resident in Italy with, you know, going in that. And the issue was mostly what Ilarion, you know, looking at some lectures and speeches that Ilarion gave to Catholic, for example, in Naples, to Catholic seminary, with presence of cardinal there, pushing forward traditional values. The concept of traditional values was the concept, you know, then they would translate, you know, anti-gay, pro-family, pro-children, something of that. And here, Russia on both levels, and, you know, traditional values also became official ideology of Putin's Russia. It ended up virtually in constitution. There was discussion. But I looked actually where those traditional values come. And you know what? Helsinki agreements, human rights, and exactly in Geneva at the Human Rights Commission, Soviet lawyer, more or less of my age, was employed, and he coined the term and then the concept of traditional values as counterbalance human rights. And Russia, Soviet Union yet used that concept all the time. Then to join together, first of all, different states that were authoritarian, and still does, and especially in Geneva. So here we have, you know, and with that, it was still in Pope Benedict time that Russians started giving themselves as alternative, not as Russian mir, Ruski mir, but as alternative value-based civilization. And that's where you, well, global Russia. Yeah, but that's very serious. And I think, and because, you know, it's not Pope Francis, but that was very good question, what he was hearing at those visits and talks. And in UNESCO, I heard also from some saying, we are being, you know, colonized. For example, Africans saying, we are being colonized by obligations that are imposed of us with financial help on birth control, sex education, on something of that. Of course, Pope hears it, and he spoke about it quite. So that's another. So we are in this way of the concepts that is, and so it's not easy to get out of it. Also because, you know, it's not just now, it's and on the different levels of Catholic Church, on bishops' levels, of young priests, of young conservative Catholics in different countries. So that's also, so that's where Ukraine suddenly finds itself. That is very different from state towards state, but that's ecclesial policy, manipulative, everything, but it's very serious. Russia would love to, through Vatican, to decompose European Union. That politics are really directed towards European Union, because Ilarion, wherever he would go, he would speak. There were quotes of European Union as a super authoritarian state that controls its members, its morals, it's something of that. with presence like Cardinal Sepe sitting there and listening to it, or you know, or somebody else, and I think in certain parts they succeeded. They succeeded, at least creating serious suspicion through different social groups of Catholics in different countries again. And then sometimes when they speak, okay, Catholic Church, you know, which you're talking about, you Lithuanians saying, you know, that they, but there are Russian Catholics in Russia that support Putin. Or, you know, there are Catholics somewhere else. So it's very complex game. And really, we have to be attentive and actually understanding. But I believe this seminar, thanks to you, allow us to talk not about East politic, but politic of East towards Vatican and how to deal with it. And I absolutely agree with Jan. Yes, Vatican gets an enormous amount of information. Other countries, you know, through consolations can use that information if you go to console and whatever. But also that information, it's very different how Nunciature gets information and what they pass and what embassies normally pass. Embassy goes on certain level, political and decision-making. Nunciature comes to the parish level. So information gets, you know, from the parish priest or whatever his education and political affiliation. Some people, you know, they talk. So it's very mixed bag and very different approach. And it's there, and, you know, then depends how, you know, somebody in Vatican, there's no offices that take care of countries. There's a person that holds the file of the country, and quite often not one. And they give. Like Ukraine was in the hands of Visvaldas Kulbokas. And I know that he was given by Gallagher 1 hour to expose to Pope his opinion on Ukrainian situation that is very different from what Pope was thinking. It was very frank talk or whatever. So not that they don't try of something like that. Then talking, you know, but as Jan says, if somebody speaks, that's it. Causa finita.